I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here. There's been an election in India, and I think they've elected this very honored creature called a bull. There's a man named Narendra Modi who is apparently a bull keeper, but the bull wants to run, Gordon.
Oh, it certainly does, and there's a lot of reasons to think that it will, John.
We welcome Abhik Bhattacharya of the Wall Street Journal, who writes Heard on the Street. He's in Hong Kong watching India very closely. There's nothing but problems in India, and we'll get to them in a moment, but there's Modi, and there's ambition, and there's rumor of much higher. The market running in India. Abhik, a very good morning to you in Hong Kong. The market bulls in India, they're selling a very good story. Is the rest of the planet buying it? Do you see interest, new interest coming in from outside?
Actually, the interest has really slowed down if you're talking about just the most recent weeks. And let me just tell you what's happened this year. The sentiment around Mr. Modi winning and then when he actually won was so high that up till May, there were billions of dollars that entered the Indian stock market. So right now, after so much rallying, the market has really quietened down. And I think that's the smart thing to do, because the next thing to wait for, and the reason you would now want to put your money, is for Mr. Modi to really start implementing his policies. He's talked a big game. He's talked about, improving the standard of living of 1 billion plus Indians. He's talked about supply side reforms, more infrastructure, getting rid of labor laws and shackles, and so much else. And all of that requires a lot of policy making, which now has to start.
So, Abhik, will he be able to do that? I mean, if you look at his record at Gujarat, where he was chief minister, he was certainly very determined and very persistent and very successful. Will he be able to make India one big Gujarat?
I think that's a mixed. My answer to that is really mixed, because while he's a really effective administrator and he might be able to do a lot of things that are in his power, my contention is that there's really still a bunch of things in India's federation of states which are outside his power. And the fact that India is a federation of states means that some of the big things that have to be done, power sector reform, raising power prices, getting mining kickstarted again, is either left to the state governments or is left to courts, both of which he cannot directly influence.
Electricity. Let's go to that great big blackout. Took out more than half the country, as I recall. It was a nightmare, and I think we talked to Abhik about it. People without air conditioners, the trains didn't work, there was threats to hospitals. And at the time, what I learned is that India's electricity is one great big unknown, and that no one has addressed it or has pretended to solve it these many years in the 20th century and here in the 21st. Does India's electricity, the reliance of natural resources, the utilities, is that a component that will be solved before India can enjoy this bull run? Or will the bulls run despite the fact that the electricity goes out?
Well, this is a hugely important question, and I'm glad you asked it. I mean, electricity really is the foundation of any new manufacturing or industrial or even services economy. And my point here is that Modi will not be able to do everything that's needed. For the honest and ideal reform to have is just a complete overhaul of the electricity system. Half of that was done with the former BJP government, which was in power until 2004. They really did a good job on about half the electricity system. But the other half really needs to be completely reformed and overhauled. Somehow I doubt Mr. Modi is interested in a complete overhaul. So what he will do is he'll do a number of piecemeal things, like making sure that power stations have enough coal to burn. But the final electricity price, which is really what drives everything, right? Because if you suppress prices, then you're really goosing up demand without ensuring supply. That is left to the state governments, and that is every state for itself.
Abhik, Modi's party, the BJP, does it control enough state governments to make a difference, or were they basically still in Congress's hands?
No, it's sort of a mixed bag. They control a few big states, but certainly not all of them. So the hope is that over the next 5 years, either Modi's party will end up winning more state elections, or you will generally have a competition among the states. Because Modi has set the standard for growth and development, all the other states will follow, because otherwise they'll just be kicked out as well of government. But that is the hope. Like, we really have to see how this plays out over the next 5 years. I mean, politics at the end of the day are local, so there are so many local factors in each state which may prevent prevent this big growth and development narrative from really taking hold.
So you could have some states that are very prosperous, doing very, very well, and you could have other states that are left behind because they haven't bought on to the philosophy. So you could end up with two separate Indias, or maybe three or four separate Indias.
Exactly.
Puzzle for me now. Are the banks stable? They're not in China, for example, and the banks in America let's leave it alone. All right, the banks in India, are they regarded as worthy, as significant for this bull run, prospective bull run?
Well, that's another great question because, as we know, in any developing country, most of the money and capital comes from banks. So if you don't have banks that are healthy and able to lend to new businesses like power stations or factories, then you really don't have a bull run at all. And the good news about India is, unlike in countries like China, you can see that things are bad. The banks are reporting bad loans, unlike in China. So you know how bad the hole is, and you know exactly how much money is needed to fill the hole. The bad thing is you don't have that much money. So either the government has to pony it up by getting rid of its subsidies and other things that force it to spend on those things, wasteful projects, and instead divert the money to recapitalizing banks, which most of the banking system, by the way, is state-owned, which is why the government needs to put in that money. Or you need to start privatizing all the banks and making sure that private investors put in money and ensure this bull run.
But you know, when Modi was chief minister of Gujarat, one thing he did do very well was to attract investment from other parts of India. So it would seem to me that he would be at least inclined to try to get money from the outside, including from foreigners, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, but then the question is he ready to privatize the banks, if we're still talking about the banks? A lot of banks are very close to, say, the government holds like 55% or 60% of it. So the moment you invite more capital, and this could be private capital from India or foreign capital from the US or Europe, you are then diluting the government. So I am very happy to see the government diluted. I don't think the government should be in the business of owning banks, but I'm not exactly sure if Mr. Modi is willing to make that case to the Indian public.
Abhik Bhattacharya, reporting from Hong Kong, he writes Heard on the Street for the Wall Street Journal, and we're looking at the prospective better days for the Indian markets. Buy the rumor, sell the fact. That works in India the way it works in New York, and that is a good reason to invest something in a country with so much potential. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.